welcome back everyone. So I'm Nicola Idle, Director at Shared Agenda. So we're a consultancy working with local authorities and MATs, doing things from strategic estate analysis and planning right through project development and delivery. So thinking right back to this morning, we heard from Andre, there's around 300 AP settings currently nationally. We're going to hear a little bit more about two of them today and how they've developed those purpose-built facilities for some of our most vulnerable young people. Facilities that can flex to adapt those changing needs and change and adapt over time. So Tim will be up first talking about his practice's first experience of delivering a PRU setting that was a replacement for a facility currently that was previously in a 1950s children home. And then Catherine will talk to us about her facility, which is the creation of a brand new AP free school situated in the heart of a mainstream campus. And then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So over to you.
Hello. With me, I have the wonderful head of SILS 3, Yomi Adewaye, who won't be talking, but will be happy to answer any questions you may have at the end. What I'd like to show you is a PRU that we designed for Southwark, and it was completed in 2020. SILS stands for Southwark Inclusive Learning Service, and SILS 3 caters for Key Stage 3, 11 to 14-year-olds. It has a capacity of up to 60, but I think operates at rather lower than that. SILS 3 was previously housed in this 1950s children's home on the site, which was a very unsuitable and unlovely place for a home, or indeed for a PRU for SILS 3. Although it turns out that some of the SILS 3 parents grew up in this home, we've discovered. And Southwark had tried for some years to find a new site to build a new SILS 3 without success. People didn't welcome PRUs next to them. And it remained unresolved until somebody suggested that it might be possible to build a new school on the existing site beside the children's home before demolishing it. And Southwark set up a limited design competition. They were very determined to do something well, and they had a project manager who was well informed and had a short list of good architects who competed for the commission, and we won it with this proposition, which really demonstrated that it was possible to make a good SILS 3 despite the constraints of the site. So our work began. We hadn't done a PRU before. We've designed lots of different kinds of school buildings, but never a PRU. So we started, my colleague Anna and I, by immersing ourselves in the life of the SILS 3 as it was, just listening and observing for days and weeks, sitting in on lessons, sitting in on the staff meetings that happen at the beginning and the end of each day, talking to the head, senior staff, teachers, teaching assistants, and with some difficulty talking to the children, but really just beginning to get a detailed understanding of what life was like. And I can remember that you start at 9 in the morning, it seems a very long day by the time you get to 3 o'clock, and the tension has risen gradually through the day until everybody goes home. But I think that period of immersive observation was one of the secrets of the project's success. We were not allowed to photograph very much, so this was the only photograph I could find of a class being observed in the old building. Southwark had an education design brief written by a consultant back in 2016, which described in qualitative terms the kind of accommodation they thought ought to be provided, but made no quantification of it, so there was no schedule of accommodation. The crucial issue of how big things should be was undecided. But that provided our starting point, and we developed the brief with Yomi and her governors and with Southwark, really negotiating what accommodation really was needed, how big things needed to be, and it was quite a process of back and forth until it was settled. These were the diagrams that we produced about relationships between the spaces, and the idea we had in our mind that there would be some sort of generous circulation space, simple circulation space, off which all the various functions would come. This aerial photograph was taken while the school was being built, while the structure was up, and you can see how it fits around the existing children's home, which is here. It was about 1 metre away from it, and this continued in operation throughout the construction. But apart from that difficulty, it really is a beautiful site. It fronts Burgess Park, which is here. This is about 2 miles east of here, southeast of here in North Peckham, and it's surrounded by housing and trees on the other side. So once this building's gone, it's really rather a beautiful setting. And it was possible we sited the building quite necessarily on the northern edge of the site here, which allowed you to make it into a south-facing building with outside spaces and pitches and car parking down below it. This was the ground floor plan, and really this is a translation of that sausage diagram of relationships into something which has got real-sized spaces and achievable floor areas. Sorry. So you enter the building here, you come in here, leave your bicycles here, come in through a secure lobby where kids are wanted on the way in. This is Yomi's office here, and she sits with windows looking out and sees everybody coming and going. These are admin offices here, and then on the ground floor, it's all organised around a wide corridor with 2 staircases. And on the ground floor, it's mostly the shared specialist spaces, cookery here, science and practical making space here, a small hall, enough to accommodate 60, but no bigger. And most important of all, this is the dining room and kitchen at this end, perhaps the most important space in the school. And this part here is a Day 6 unit, which is entirely independent and takes children who are excluded for short periods from mainstream school. It's the short, sharp shock thing, and they work in very small groups, and their lives are very similar to the lives of most people, of grown-ups sitting in front of a screen and eating a sandwich on their desks. The plan on the first floor is similar, this wide corridor, and here are the teaching spaces, an art room, fitness studios, music studio, a large staff room here, and this wing here is a nurture unit, a secluded teaching space for certain of the children. We had some strong ideas about how we wanted the building to look and feel. Above all, we wanted it to be calm and peaceful interior, with the notion that people would feel safe and secure, and it would have warmth. Lots of daylight, lots of sun and natural materials. This is Yomi in her office, commanding things. This is the cookery room on the ground floor. Big windows, because this part of the building faces north. You can have really big windows looking out into the trees. The making spaces, practical space beside it. This is the dining hall. SILS has a wonderful cook who comes in and cooks nutritious food, breakfast and lunch, every day. And whenever anything goes wrong in the school, the first thing you hear Yomi or somebody else say is, have they eaten? What have they eaten? Clearly, food is crucial to keeping the place calm and working. The first floor is similar, the corridor, wide enough so that the kids don't bang into each other. We remember going around in the office trying to work out how wide to make a corridor so that these are kids who kind of look for trouble. They're often irritable or wanting to irritate other people. But windows looking out into the park and down into the playground. And these are the teaching spaces, which are all, I think they're about 40 square metre spaces. They hold up to 8 people, again with big windows. This is the art room on the corner, and the staff room, where they have these absolutely fascinating briefing and debriefing events at the start and the end of each day. Whatever has happened is analysed and the reasons for it. Discussed. This is the resident police officer who attends most. But we were most impressed by the relationship, and particularly with the teaching assistants, bridging the gap between the kids and their home lives and the school lives, because these are children who have complicated lives. I know that Yomi is very loath to generalise about why it is as it is, but many have early years emotional damage which reverberates through their lives. Some come from chaotic homes, some come from perfectly normal homes, but for some reason are far from settled. And the materials were very important to us. And actually, the building, I think it looks very different from the kinds of buildings that you've seen previously today. We certainly wanted to have kind of a quality of warmth, but it needed to be extremely robust, because occasionally the kids, there are tantrums, there's trouble. When we went around and we visited various other PRUs while we were designing, and what one saw is either buildings that had been armoured in one way to prevent from damage and looked brutal as a result. They looked kind of aggressive, or more often than not were full of broken things, and staff very depressed by the fact that things are broken and not repaired. So this notion of trying to make a building that was actually very robust but didn't look it was uppermost in our minds. And that's part of the reason for the ceilings, which are probably the most important part of the it's timber slatted ceilings that conceal all the services above it. So there's nothing to hang on, nothing to pull down. You can't even pull the ceilings down if you tried. The floors are engineered oak, which is very hard. The walls are made of specially double reinforced or strengthened plasterboard that we tested that you can't kick your way through. And most important of all, the joinery is made out of maple, which is the hardest wood you can get. And the glass is very thick and armoured. And for the most part, it's withstood life. It looks a bit posh, but actually it's pretty indestructible. I think the one bit that didn't quite survive were the access control systems, where the kids, you couldn't get a vandal-proof version of them, and they quickly dismantled those. But for the most part, it looks as good as new, although Yomi looks after it extremely well. So, this is the atrium on the corner with a large corner window. The building is built to London Plan standards in terms of sustainability. So it's got a roof covered in solar panels. It has, it's naturally ventilated, but with a heat recovery system, so that the windows don't open, although they do have opening shutters and louvered panels, so you can open them in the window, but there are no windows you can climb out of. Sitting on the roof of these strange Dalek-like objects that do the ventilation. It's heavily sprinklered. It's very, very low energy, highly insulated building. And it was detailed very carefully so that it was safe and indestructible. The handrails are nice and curved and pleasant to touch, but the handrail's taken up high so you can't throw your friend off the... And on the outside, it was made of a near white brick with bold white window frames and these louvered panels, big windows. And our idea was that it ought to look cheerful and optimistic, partly because the previous children's home looked so miserable, but there ought to be something that actually was sunny about the school. And in fact, on a sunny day, it does look distinctly Mediterranean. The mesh brickwork at the top screens all the solar panels on the roof. This is the entrance. It's entered which is off this cul-de-sac on Davy Street. And in summer, this is trees in leaf and bloom, and you enter and go in under the tree here. And it pronounces its obscure name on the corner. This is the back of the building. And it was planned so that, well, the previous PRU, or most PRUs we went to see, are surrounded by well-meshed fences. They look a bit like they're keeping people in. And when we commented on that to Yomi, she said, "Oh no, we like our fence. It's there to keep other people out." And that is, or was then anyway, a problem in North Peckham of kids from other gangs coming in and attacking kids in their school. So they didn't mind the fence, but we felt it was terrible. But the build was planned so that only the playground actually needed to be fenced, and we could make the other three sides of it have normal railings and landscape around it. So it's really just the fence goes around this southern part of the site, and all the fire exits and things exit here, go out into that. So this is the view from the playground, from the football pitch at the back with the fence around it, which appears to be there and is there really to keep the balls in, rather than children in or the others out. This photograph was taken at the stage where we imagined this building would be built in just over a year. You would start one summer holiday, finish it, demolish it, move in, and in fact, partly because of COVID, that didn't work. It took longer to do, but this photograph was taken as the new school was built and occupied, and this was the old school, rather hair-raising, being demolished in front of it. And then in the months afterwards, the outside works and pitches were done. I think one of the other reasons why the project was successful is the way that it was procured. My impression is that most school buildings now are procured through design and build contracts in one way or another. And this was a project that was procured in a very traditional way. I mean, firstly, Southwark, I think, have become disillusioned about design and build contracts and were determined to make something of quality. So they had a direct selection process of their architects, which set it off in a very good direction. And then we were allowed that period of briefing and evolving a design in the brief with the client, both the user client with the OMI and the council, in a way that you probably don't if you're working with a design and build contract. And then it was let on a fixed price traditional contract, and which is what we mostly do in our work, and the full construction drawings are done before tender. Everything is decided, and then it's tendered. And the difference is that, well, two differences. One is it makes it very simple. We were told subsequently that compared with the normal projects that Southwark do, this was very straightforward. There was no overlap of decisions or mostly with design and build contracts. My impression is that actually the price is designed, but what you get for the price is not that there's a continuous process of contractors trying to find what is the most profitable thing that they can provide, which complies with the specification, but not the most appropriate thing. The result is that the building looks very expensive. It costs £3,600 a square metre for the building, which is actually now the typical price of an inner London school. That even surprised me. That's the cost of the building once without the external works and the demolition costs and so forth. I very much hope that local authorities will turn back to traditional contracting to allow that kind of relationship between a client and an architect to do their work properly and do it in a way that really extracts good value. Because my impression is that the value that's coming out of design and build contracts, though they're cheap, is not as high as it was. It was built by a very good contractor, Gilbert Ash, and it was built during COVID. While the world stopped, Gilbert Ash just didn't stop. They just gradually, steadily went on building it without difficulty. Well, it's won lots of awards, an RIBA National Award. It won the New London Architecture Education Award and the Mayor's Prize for Inclusivity. But most important, it seems to work well. The client is happy, I think. And it's certainly the most satisfying project that we've done so far. Thank you. Thank you.
Take questions at the end.
Do you want to join us, Jim?
You're doing questions at the end.
Oh, sorry, no,
Yeah.
sorry. God, yes.
I've got graveyard slot. I think I could do some lighting, a song, something. I'm here to sing the praises of AP students. They're some of the most charming, idiosyncratic, quirky, wonderful human beings I've ever met in my entire career, and I think they get a bad press. Ken Robinson gave a TED talk in 2010 about changing education paradigms. And he talked about the industrial model of education and that we were all educated by our date of manufacture. And I think that will resonate with every single one of you in here, whether you build, design, teach, or lead in a school, because we did all go to school once, and we either had a successful experience or a not so successful experience. Watch it on YouTube. There's a Royal Society of Arts animation of it, and it resonates really powerfully because he talks about ADHD back in 2010 and the increasing rise of ADHD and the distraction that our young people are experiencing. Imagine if Ken Robinson was alive today. How do you think he would feel about ADHD and the diagnosis we're experiencing now? Unlike the Wherry School CEO, I have to take full responsibility for the design of this building. I will live with my mistakes. Like Oscar Wilde, I will own them. I wrote the free school bid in 2012-13. It was approved to open in 2014, obviously in a temporary build, because we wanted to build it part of the actual vision for the free school, the alternative provision, that it would be built at the heart of an outstanding mainstream school. And that wasn't without its challenges, not least of all from the teachers in the mainstream school, who didn't want those sort of children on their campus. We didn't get as much resentment or conflict from the parents of the mainstream school, but we did have a few arguments with the DFE who said, well, why do you want to build it in the middle of a mainstream school? Why not behind the sports hall? I said, well, that's where they'll go to smoke. So we won that battle as well, and the design became the reality. It was based very much on Charlie Taylor's 2012 report about improving alternative provision. He was the behaviour czar back then. He's gone on to be Her Majesty's Chief Inspector of Prisons. I don't know if that's an AP career path or not. It was also based upon Alan Milburn's strategy for social mobility. They were the underpinning principles as to why students who mainstream education didn't succeed for deserved a fair chance, and they deserved an amazing building, and they deserved it on a campus where they were the heart of everything. And we've gone on and we've succeeded with that. Would I change things? Of course I would. I'd never let a child choose the name again. We call it BBIH. I'd lose business and innovation and just call it Business Hub if I could, Beacon Hub. But you know, you live and learn. And we've just updated the logo, which was again designed by the students for their school. They are proud of their school. It's got nothing in it, reinforced Tim. And I can tell you now, nothing's been broken. The best investment we ever made was Superloos. Superloos in an AP or a PRU every single time. School toilets will get vandalised because that's their perception of what they are for. Superloos have their own sinks in. You can wash your hands in a civilised manner. You can dry them as well without everybody watching you and making you feel under pressure. We have never had one single episode of vandalism, and that school has been open since 2015, and that's a recent photograph of it. Our architects were DLA Architecture, and they also designed the lower school expansion of Beal High School, where this school is based. It's one of the biggest schools in the country. It's 12 forms of entry, year 7 to year 11. That's 360 children per year group. The sixth form has 900 students in it. The lower site expansion was designed by DLA. It was built by Morgan Sindall, that I think are here. Put your hand up if you've hung on till the death. No, they've gone. They got a name check as well. I think that's dreadful. Anyway, one of the ways that we persuaded the DFE that it was a great idea not to put it behind the sports hall or to convert a public building, which was one of Michael Gove's big things at the time with the free school movement, which started in 2011, was that we'd save on the land cost, which in London is of a premium. We also knew that we wouldn't struggle with planning because we'd already built on Greenbelt for the lower site of Beal High School, which was completed and opened in 2014. So Beacon Business Innovation Hub is in a courtyard with our ASD school, which is an additionally resource provision for 42 ASD students who access mainstream. For a minimum of 50%, we hope, and hopefully up to 90%. The sixth form building is also there, incredibly aspirational in terms of Russell Group, Oxbridge, progression routes that our students take. What we've also done is we've made the timetable the same in each school. Because I have a big problem with PRU and AP timetables that the students effectively do half a day. They start late and they go home early. They struggle with regulating themselves, so why are we giving them even more unstructured time? What's going to happen to them? So our day runs the same on this campus because it's a campus model. We've had challenges from the mainstream school and also from the parents of the children in the hub who say, well, they can't mix with students in the mainstream school. And I would say, well, why can't they? So we started with not out of sight, out of mind. But I think what's really depressing, and I think you've got to champion this if you design, build, have the authority to give permission to build more AP-free schools, is that a headline in Schools Week, which is a sector rag, in October 2023, its headline was still not out of sight, out of mind, unregulated AP provision. So we haven't moved on from 2012. We're now in 2024, and you still get the impression that these children should be placed out of sight, out of mind, because they haven't succeeded in mainstream school. There are many different types of AP students, and the buildings need to meet their needs in different ways. We got it wrong a lot of the time at the beginning, which I'll explain. But we talk about the fallen who are not on track to get 5 good GCSE grades. Probably won't get any. We've got the faltering. In this country, over 40% of students every year don't get 5 good GCSE grades. We've also got the fed up and able. They are really, really bright, but their talents lie outside that traditional academic pathway, and they need something different to harness that talent. They can't get lost in a mainstream school when you're moving from lesson to lesson, some that they won't engage with. And then we have the fragile, and we've got more of these than ever before, and we got more when we opened than we imagined. We call them the bedroom children. They are the school refusers for a variety of reasons. They may have been bullied, or they just can't cope with the concept of having up to 17 different teachers in a week, because at their primary school they were in one room. So we had to factor all of those things in terms of our design, and we had to think about the habits of mainstream and the habits of AP, because it shouldn't all be alternative. If these children are to succeed in alternative provision and to go on and be confident individuals, responsible citizens, and lead successful lives, we have to make sure they get back on track, whatever their track is. So it can't be too alternative. It can't be disenfranchised from the national curriculum. These children do need to succeed in English and maths. What else they do can be tailored. But there also has to be accountability with the people running these schools that are unregulated and the children are not succeeding and they are lost in the system. That's where it is in the heart of the campus. You can't miss it. And that was our intention from the get-go. And our children are very proud of that. And all the children on this campus have accepted it. And they all get along together. We have the usual frissons, of course you do. Any school will. Children are growing up. But the co-location with a mainstream school supports the re-engagement of students who have become disengaged. And I think that's the key to success of regulating and normalising alternative provision for young people and helping them succeed. I sound like I'm on a real bandwagon. I am. I used to be head teacher of a very tough boys' school in Manchester, and I saw things there that will stay with me for my entire career. I'm now in London through various means and mechanisms. But when I was in Manchester, I was part of the Building Schools for the Future programme, heavily involved with that. And I can remember being shown around a brand new school. It was great. You know, it's one of those main streets, loads of glass that was boiling in the summer. Didn't happen much in Manchester. Then also lots of satellite hubs and things like that. And I saw this young man and I said, what do you think of your new school? And this has stayed with me when we were building this and all the other buildings and schools and changes and refurbishments that I've done within my trust. And he said, it's same bleak, different building, miss. the design of a building has to support the curriculum of the school. We are struggling with legacy buildings. We would love your lighting. We struggle with just lights and plugs sometimes. But we have to have that aspiration, and we have to have it for all of our students, regardless of their background and how they became disengaged. It almost feels more socially acceptable if you have a child with SEND than a child who's become disengaged for a variety of reasons. We've seen a change of profile in our students. We have an awful lot of unaccompanied asylum seekers now who have suffered atrocities that you can't possibly imagine. They can't just be thrown into a mainstream school. We have to make sure there are schools like BBIH that can accommodate them, can remove the language barriers and get them on track to be positive members of our society. I think it's a must, and it shouldn't be ignored, and we shouldn't keep putting it out of sight, out of mind. But now I have to declare my vanity and my mistakes. I try to do something lighty here. I went to visit some Kunskapsskolan schools, and I'm really pleased I can say that, in Sweden. And some post-16 learners there had helped design their college. And one of the things they came up with, and it was beautiful over there, it was the cave. They said, we love learning and doing our homework and things like that in our bedrooms, and the only light is from our screens. I thought, that sounds like a fab idea. Spoke to DLA, they thought it was. I think Morgan Sindel thought we were mad. And so we designed it. The kids absolutely hated it. Loathed, despised, wouldn't go in, and then probably took someone in and duffed them up occasionally. But we rolled with it. I have to tell you that now it is bright and airy and a human scale computing teaching room. Because teaching rooms matter to AP schools and to AP students, just like small spaces for counselling and privacy and for the mental health support that we have to provide for the variety of needs of our students. But that's in addition to their curriculum, which runs 5 lessons a day. There are some alternative providers outside. We've got some that wanted to work with fish. We couldn't provide that. Living fish. So we had to find a provider who could. We've also got some that are taking part in farming courses and things like that, but their core remains true and in BBIH. But the teaching rooms do matter. We did start with the building. It's 2-storey, that we'd have lots of open spaces and they could think and they could talk and they communicate. They hate one another. They didn't want to talk about things like that, but they did want classrooms and they did want to be taught. We submitted a significant change to the DFE to actually reduce the age. So it's 14 to 19, and we reduced it to 12 to 19 because we were getting so many schools and local authorities asking if we take younger students. Year 9, yes. Year 8, oh my God, they're barking mad. It was a different type of need and a different type of disenfranchised child and very difficult to cope with. In exception, we'll take them, but year 9 who follow a typical Key Stage 3 curriculum that they would get in a mainstream school, including MFL and everything else you think that AP children might not do, they do well because our key performance indicator has to be that they either reintegrate back into mainstream or we give them a great progression route. So they get exactly the same subjects as they would in a mainstream. At Key Stage 4, it's the same again, but we have pathways for EAL students where we have to remove the language barrier. We do have this. At the heart of the school is a professional catering kitchen because one of the pathways is catering and hospitality. The children cook their food. They cook lunch. They cook break time food. The food's there is better than in the main school canteen. We also provide free breakfast because you do get hangry students that come and haven't eaten. So we may as well take away that barrier and that conflict immediately. It also gets them in. But they're all things that make a difference. And they are so respectful of the building and of one another. It's for 100 full-time equivalent. We usually have around 75, and we get lots of mid-year arrivals. They don't always arrive in the beginning of September, at the beginning of a year. It's not neat and tidy. So we have to have a curriculum that will bend to their needs and accommodate them and allow them to achieve success. The classrooms do matter. They deserve to be taught well by qualified teachers, not unregulated people that are just keeping them there to learn how to play pool well. That's why spaces for AP should not be in dual-purpose buildings that turn into a youth centre in the evening and they just shove stuff to the side and it doesn't matter. Or, as you said, Tim, everything's broken. They deserve better. We're responsible for them and we have to do our best so that they feel proud of it. I can't believe that child's got a coat on. I shall go back and complain. We built a science lab. This is a human scale science lab. Why should they go into the mainstream school and have science in a lab for 25? We usually have maximum class size of 12 in BBIH. So let's give them a science lab. They absolutely love it. And science suddenly matters to them again. It wouldn't matter if we said, well, today you're doing science, but again, just turn to page 24 in your textbook. And that's why it is so important that we value it and we value them. They do get on well together. We do have a fluctuating role because some students just disappear due to extreme family circumstances. This was the original design with the ground, first, second floor. It's really stood us in good stead because we didn't set things in stone. We saved a fortune because Morgan Sindall were finishing off the lower site and then they were instructed to do this site. And it meant that we'd got an awful lot of the safety and welfare matters sorted out, safeguarding such a big issue on a campus of this size. I think we should have a blueprint for AP and I think it should be national. I think we should have an AP national curriculum. And I don't think that that should be negotiable. I don't think English and maths should be forgotten. You need to be numerate and literate to succeed in life. And I think there needs to be more accountability. Ofsted isn't enough once every 3 or 4 years. That's why we've got so much unregulated AP. And that's why we end up with children out of the education system and actually lost in a system that's exploiting them. The buildings are key to that, and part of that blueprint, I believe, is putting AP schools at the heart of successful mainstream schools, aligning the timetables and the curriculum because it extends the offer. If you're a small AP school, you can't offer all of the curriculum subjects. You can't offer all of the extracurricular entitlement that mainstream children take for granted. The children in BBIH take part in the trust chess tournaments. They take part in extracurricular sport and the arts, because that's one thing we stay true to in our trust. So they are in the school shows, they are in the concerts, and they've removed the barriers themselves from mainstream that they couldn't access. Without knowing it, they are accessing mainstream, and they are no longer disenfranchised, which is why the buildings cannot be out of sight, out of mind. They have to be at the heart of a successful education system. Because if you do what you always did, you'll get what you always got. And we've still got the same headlines in 2023 that we had in 2012. So I hope the graveyard slot wasn't too preachy, but these children matter. And I think the buildings that they're taught in matter even more. Thanks very much.